What's up, YouTube basketball family? It's Keenan Womack. I'm here with my illustrious, multi-talented co-host, Mr. Ari Temkin. How are we doing today, my friend?
Multi-talented. I don't know about that, but I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So remember always to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and once again, still looking for sponsorship. So go ahead and shoot Blake Skaggs an email, Skaggs, SKAGGSOB @gmail.com, so we can get working on something. So I kind of want to start off. Let's talk about Seton Hall a little bit. So they lost 64-60. It was a pretty exciting game, actually, considering it wasn't that high scoring. But microcosm of the season, man. They played great defense and just couldn't execute offensively down the stretch. They shoot 1 for 13 from three, which is going to lose every single time. You can't shoot 1 for 13 from three in a college game and expect to win. It doesn't happen. They had 37 points in the first half, so they looked pretty good in the first half. Trey Mitchell was stellar. I mean, he was awesome. Through the first 30 minutes of that game, he was definitely like the best player on the court. They only had 23 second half points though, which was very concerning. They missed 8 straight field goals going down the stretch. They scored 8 points in the final 9 minutes, and they just couldn't hit any shots when it counted. They had opportunities, they had open looks, and just nothing was falling for them, especially from deep. I mean, again, 1 for 13 is just not going to get it done against anybody.
A couple of things out of that game. Did they shoot 60% in the first half?
Yeah, they shot a really good percentage in the first half and really poorly in the second.
So Seton Hall hit a 3 at the end of the first half to tie the game in halftime.
Yep.
You're tied on the road shooting 60% in a half. That's a problem. You're not going to shoot 60% over a 40-minute basketball game. So when you shoot that high of a percentage and you don't have a lead or a substantial lead, that's a problem. I don't want to keep going back to last year or like Shaka's teams, but 1 of 13 is bad. I feel like last year's team would have ended up like 3 of 35. Like that. They were so bombs away where it was like, at least Chris Beard was like, all right, let's stop shooting threes. You know what I mean? Like at the very least, this team wasn't bombs away so that they only attempted 13, which tells you that he kind of felt like, hey, these aren't going to fall. Let's just work the ball in. I mean, I think they had great offense initiated from Trey Mitchell.
Yeah.
I mean, he
Timmy
was
too.
Spectacular. Timmy Allen, again, I mean, he's initiating their offense from the elbows. So a lot of that I think was an adjustment. And then, yeah, their end of game was bad. You and I texted really a little bit, and that, I mean, they were down 64-60, and it's like Marcus Carr. At that point, the game's probably lost anyways, but still, you got to go quick. You're down 2 possessions. You got
15 seconds left.
Yeah.
They took like 7-8 seconds off the clock. Carr had an open 3, and he just drove it in and then dribbled back out. It was really awkward.
Down 2 possessions.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me. It was really strange. I mean, I think that at that point, like you said, the game is probably lost, but like you gotta hurry, man. You gotta make a play, man. Come on.
And I just think like their end of game execution, it's got to improve. It will improve. I think it was like, was it 60-60? It was like tied at one point coming down the stretch, final like 2 minutes of the game. And Seton Hall just had better possessions offensively than Texas did.
Yeah, they did. And another thing with that game that was interesting to me is like they only forced 9 turnovers throughout the game, which is kind of like Texas bread and butter is forcing turnovers and getting points off turnovers. They don't play a lot of transition. Strangely, like they don't get a ton of they don't play a lot of like run and gun type stuff. They play a lot of half court, but they force a lot of turnovers, and they've been averaging before, I can't remember if it's including that game or not including that game. They're forcing 21 turnovers per game, I think, before Seton Hall. And if you're only going to force 9 in that game, you have to shoot better than 1 for 13 from 3. Like,
right.
Something's got to give. You can't go away from your main strategy and then also not shoot well from 3.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So there's really only those 2 games out of conference that stand out. But what's Texas's best win right now?
I don't know if they have one, man. Like, I'm not kidding. They haven't beaten anybody that's even like close to a quad 1 team, I don't think. They play Stanford on Sunday, which is at least a P6 game, and they should win that going away because Stanford's not very good. But I don't know. I've watched every game. I've been to every home game, obviously for work, and I couldn't tell you what their best win is. Straight up. Don't you agree though?
Yeah, totally. That's why I asked the question. I don't know what their best win is. I don't know who the best team they played is.
Maybe
certainly
Northern
not
Colorado.
Arkansas Pine Bluff.
No, maybe Northern Colorado. I mean, that might be the best team they've beaten this year. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it's sort of going back to one thing that you said about end of game execution. That was the only game where they had to practice that. Like, right. That was the only game that was close this entire season for them. They were either getting blown out once or blowing out the other team by 20 or 30 every time. And yeah, so, I'm not surprised that they didn't play well in the last couple minutes of that game because they hadn't been in that situation before.
Good
so
point.
I didn't think that, like, I wasn't super, like, if I was a Texas fan for that game, I wouldn't have been super embarrassed by it. I think Seton Hall's legit, and that's a hard road game to play. So I think
you shot 1 of 13 from 3.
And you were in it at the end. You shot 1 of 13 from 3. You're in it at the end. There are a couple of notes from Pine Bluff, unless you have anything more on Seton Hall. No, it's not really about Pine Bluff. It's more about just the team in general. But
well, yeah. And what can you? I mean, it was good to see Dylan Disu play.
Yes, it was great, man. I really like that kid. He's a really good dude. He's an OB athlete, so I've talked to him a couple of times, and he's just really humble. He's just ready to play. All he wanted to do was get on the court. Like, that's all he wanted, and he finally got to. It was pretty cool. Yeah,
so I guess that was for me to lead you off into the Pine Bluff notes. Like, Disu plays, that's a big one because they've been waiting all year to get him.
Yep. It was really cool. His first sequence on defense, or maybe second sequence, he got a massive block and the place just went nuts. Like, the bench was going crazy, man. Like, how excited they were to have him back and just how they rallied around him. He's from Pflugerville.
Right.
So he's an awesome kid. I think he just went to Pflugerville High School, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I can't remember. But yeah, he is going to be a major impact this year for this team defensively. And they need a guy who can block shots, and that he can do that. Like, they are bottom quarter in the country in blocking shots per game right now. And Trey Mitchell is pretty much their only guy who consistently gets a block a game even. So it's really nice to have somebody who looks like they can get out there and get some blocks. And he got a few rebounds too. I mean, he was the SEC rebounding champ until he got injured. And the fact that he came into the game, hadn't played a game since February 17th, came into the game, got 5 rebounds in 10 minutes. It's a great indication of what he can do. I mean, he was on a strict, minutes restriction, but he impacted the game from his small amount of time. I know it's Pine Bluff. It doesn't really matter. And Pine Bluff's 1-11 now, but it was just cool to see him out there in action, and the team was really rallying around him.
And I want to add this on Trey Mitchell or Disu.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult to ask a player to shoulder a majority of the offensive burden and then also give full effort defensively. It's rare to find a guy that is going to be your best offensive and defensive player, simply because you're going to, over the course of a 40-minute basketball game, you're going to have diminishing returns on one end of the floor because of fatigue. So the thing about Mitchell is you want him at this point to be giving most of that effort on the offensive end. And so you need somebody else to sort of shoulder that burden on the defensive end. It can happen, and he's been a good defensive player, but it's just hard. You just rarely see that. You get guys that you're not going to be able to give all effort on one end of the floor and the other end of the floor. And for these hyper athletes where just give them lobs at the rim, that's not Mitchell's game. Mitchell is, he's getting the right. Exactly. He's more of an effort offensive performer as opposed to just throw something at the rim and he'll get it and dunk it.
Yeah, he's not a Dylan Mitchell, who's the recruit they have coming in next year, who that's his game. He's just a monster athlete.
And Texas has had a load of those guys.
Kai Jones, Greg Brown, Jericho Sims, all those dudes last year were just throw it up near the rim and he'll Randy Moss it. Just, I think literally Jericho Sims was on that "You Got Mossed" segment. I think he literally was one time, like catching a hoop over somebody. So yeah, no, he was. I mean, he's a monster athlete. There's a reason he didn't score much last year, and he was still drafted in the draft. I thought he would be a UDFA, but he ended up getting picked up by the Knicks, which is cool because
NBA loves those guys.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's good to have them. You know, there's a lot to their game that isn't like just obvious. Like just having a guy who's 6'10" with a 40-something inch vertical is insane. First of all, that's ridiculous. But yeah, so I think that is one of the issues I was going to talk about with the team is they lack a guy like that. They don't have like a freaky athlete. They don't have a Greg Brown, Kai Jones, Jericho Sims type. They have a lot of skilled dudes, but not a lot of like jump out the gym athletes. And I think Disu is a good athlete. I just don't think he's not a Kai Jones type. But I think he might be their best athlete.
It's so interesting because they've just had so many of those guys.
I know.
If they could have only had Trey Mitchell last year, or like Greg Brown this year, or Kai Jones this year, like it's unbelievable.
If they had Jericho Sims this year, they'd be.
And who's the kid from that was drafted by Orlando?
Mo Bamba.
Yeah, Bob. I mean, they just had so many of these guys.
Jackson Hayes.
Hayes.
Jared Allen. I mean, all those dudes. Who, by the way, quick side note: Jared Allen is unbelievably good. He's unbelievably good, man.
Texas has some of the best underrated. Texas has some of the best pros of all of the college basketball programs.
I think they're third or fourth in college basketball and pros in the NBA. They have 14 right now. So,
and it's not even just first of all, it's amazing because
it's incredible.
They haven't won anything.
I know. It's very frustrating.
Right. But I mean, top end talent too. I mean, Durant and Jared Allen and
Aldridge.
LaMarcus Aldridge is still playing.
He's still balling, dude. He's still really good. PJ Tucker had 23, 9, and 5 the other night.
How the hell is PJ Tucker still playing?
Dude, because he's the man.
I mean, I think he played for Tom Penders. Chris Mims still in the NBA?
Tom Penders, baby. That's a throwback. So there is something I wanted to talk about with the offensive numbers. So I was doing a little research on pace of play. The Longhorns are 353rd out of 358 teams in pace.
Wow.
Yeah. They average 65 possessions per game.
And so it's interesting because you talked about they want to turn you over and get in transition.
But they don't get into transition really. They play a lot of half court. You know,
that's what's interesting is that's so rare. And maybe that's because they don't have supreme athletes.
I think that's probably what it is. Yeah. Because it makes more sense for them to a lot of the time to run half court because they don't have dudes who are flying to the rim. They don't have a bunch of, 6'10" rim runners. They don't have dudes, they don't have Clint Capella on their team who's going to run side to side and throw it down for a jam. They have dudes who are decent to good athletes, but they don't have anybody that's like an absolute, monster.
That is a really interesting stat. And I think it speaks to two things. So one, if you're going to have a faster pace if you play transition ball and you've got great athletes, or two, if you're a really good 3-point shooting team, you want to score a lot. You want to get a lot of possessions because you want to play the percentages game. That I guess I wonder, do you expect that to like, do you think they'll play that way all year? Do you think that's the style they want to play with? They do have 3-point shooting. So I don't know why they wouldn't want to.
Texas? They have 3-point. I don't know that they do, man. That's my concern. I don't know that they have 3-point shooting. They shot 6 for 19 against Pine Bluff. I mean, I know that they don't play many possessions, but Baylor played Pine Bluff, and it's stupid to compare, like games like that. I get it, but Baylor scored 95 against that team. Texas scored 63. It's
that's so interesting because I think of them as a 3-point with Febris and Ramey and
they haven't been good this year. 6 for 19 against Pine Bluff, man. I mean, they haven't had a game where they really exploded from 3 yet.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's concerning more than anything because like if they're going to compete in the Big 12, man, they have to hit some threes.
Do you think it's by design? I mean, because Do you think this is a Chris Beard thing? Like it's by design that they're like slow the ball down, play half court, work the offense, get shots inside or mid-range shots. Like
I think that is, but like I don't think the fact that they can't hit threes is by design. I just think they don't have any really good shooters. I think Disu is probably one of their best 3-point shooters. He only took 1 3 in that game and he missed it. But in the post-game press conference, Beard was like, my only problem with that shot from Disu is that it didn't go in because it was like a wide open good look and he barely missed it. But, you know, I thought that they'd be able to run more like what I thought they would be running is a lot of pick and pop stuff with Trey Mitchell. And they haven't really done that at all that I've seen. Maybe a few times, but that I thought that would be like a common set they'd run. I know they don't run a lot of sets because it's motion or whatever, but like I figured that they would try to get that involved more than they have been.
It's so I'm trying to look through like what's like Courtney Ramey's career 3-point shooting percentage. Like I know Andrew Jones.
Ramey shot 41% from 3 last year. Yeah.
And I mean, Marcus Carr shouldn't he be more of a consistent?
He's never had a great 3-point shooting percentage. He's never been super efficient. Like I think he shot 33% from 3 last year. But again, like I've said a million times, he was taking a lot of bad shots because that team was bad. But I just like to see more confidence from the guards, man. Like I think that they are timid. They pass up a lot of open. This whole team passes up a lot of open shots. I'd like to see shots earlier in the shot clock. I know it's bad basketball.
No, but that's going to up their pace for sure.
It'll up their pace. And like, I don't know if Beard wants to play at a slow pace. I'm sure he does. Cause I mean, that helps even the playing field when you don't have as good of athletes and you're playing at a slower pace. Like if you play against a team that's like hyper athletic, like Baylor, like they're going to want to run the floor because they can beat you that way. Cause they have like better athletes than most teams do. And like, holy crap, they're good, man.
Yeah.
Baylor. Woo!
I mean,
oh my gosh.
And like, you look at the guys that came back from last year's team and then some of the like high-end guys they add. And then you're like, who's LJ Cryer? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah. He was on the team last year and he didn't play a lot because that team was so loaded.
Well, I mean, defensively, like, holy crap.
They're the best defensive team in the nation.
And like they lost 2 elite. I mean, Davion Mitchell is unbelievably good defensively.
One of the best defensive guards I've ever seen in college. Davion Mitchell.
I saw a video of him like for the Kings last night, like locking down a dude full court. And but yet like they're bigs. The way like Chamwa Chachua,
that guy's awesome too, man.
They're playing him out on the perimeter. And like normally guys, like especially against Villanova is like, oh, we can take this guy to the rim. And he's like, no, you can't.
No, you can't. Yeah, they held. So for those who didn't hear about it, they held number 6 or 7 Villanova to
something like
37 points in an entire game. Villanova scored 15 first half points in that game. 15.
It was it
was a clinic.
Yeah. And Scott Drew said after the game, like, yeah, I mean, certainly our defense played a role, but they missed a lot of shots. But no, I mean, their defense. And the thing is, it's one of those things where it's like sometimes it's blocked shots or it's, contested shots at the rim. But then there's like parts of that you can't really measure because of the way that you're impacting them psychologically when you're consistently contesting shots.
Yes, I was about to say that. Like, you can't put into it's like when a quarterback is freaked out because he keeps getting hit and he starts like throwing incompletions. You can't really account for that statistically. It's the same thing when you're like when you're getting like blocked at the 3-point line because they have so many good athletes who are like long and physical. It's like you're freaked out. You alter the way you shoot. You try to release quicker. You try to release higher. It's just like messes with your shot every time. And that's just how it works with Baylor's defense. I mean, it's impossible to score against those guys at a consistent clip.
I'm anxious to see the start of Big 12 play because the Big 12 is so freaking good.
Oh, it's loaded.
I mean, maybe Kansas State is the worst team at this point.
Probably. I thought it would be OU or Iowa State, but they both have great wins, and Iowa State's ranked.
Iowa State's like a fringe, and Iowa State starts out Big 12 play with like Baylor at Texas. Like they have a really tough start to Big 12 play, and then Oklahoma, they beat a 12th ranked Arkansas team by 22.
It was not even close. I watched the whole game. Not even close. At any point, it wasn't close.
And we had Porter Mosier on Big 12 radio this week, and it was like, he's like, yeah, I came in and I had like 3 players on my roster. So I basically recruited an entire, I mean, it's insane the amount what they were able to do in this offseason with that team. And that's a really talented basketball team.
Yeah, there's really not like any bad, like terrible bad teams in the Big 12. Maybe Kansas State, but like every single game you could lose. Like that's crazy. That's just, it's so much pressure. But more than anything, it's good for tournament play. Like you're going to be ready to see like the best teams because you've been playing the best teams all year. I mean, they play 16 conference games, 18, something like that.
Yeah, home and home. Yeah, 18.
Yeah, so, 18 in the Big 12. Yeah. So you're going to play all those 18 games and then the Big 12 tournament, and you're going to be ready for the NCAA tournament. Nobody's going to surprise you because you've been playing great teams all year.
Yeah, well said. I think that stat you brought up is really interesting to sort of continue to evaluate all year because it's just interesting in terms of the pace they're playing at. And that I wonder if it's a stylistic decision. And on top of that, like it's tough. If you take the air out of the ball and limit the possessions, you're leaving yourself up for some issues when a team gets really hot in a game.
Right.
You're leaving yourself in bad position for like high variant games. And
if you get down big, like it's going to be really hard to come back if you're playing.
And I guess the idea is you won't get down big because, you're playing slow, but I'll be interested to see, because there are a lot of teams that want to play fast in this conference. So I'm going to be interested to see if that continues. And, I do wonder if the 3-point shooting woes continue too, if that's a part of it also, where you're not shooting the ball well. And so you just want to continue to slow it down because you don't want to add extra possessions on top of it. So,
yeah, it's definitely, I do think again, that it's a stylistic choice. I think that it's sort of like how Virginia plays super slow pace. And like, I've said this before. So the way that they play, it evens the playing field for teams with better athletes than they have. What it also does is evens the playing field for teams that don't have as good of athletes as they do. And that's why they lost that UMBC game, I think, because they're playing at this slow pace. They get down big, and there's no way for them to come back.
That's a great point.
We should talk real quickly about Stanford. I don't have a lot on them because they haven't really played. They haven't really beaten anybody good this year. So they're 5-3. Baylor beat them by 40. What are you going to do? It's Baylor. What are you going to do? Santa Clara beat them pretty good too. I think Santa Clara beat them by 20, and then they lost to Colorado. They have 5 wins. They beat Tarleton State. They beat San Jose State. So that's another common opponent between Texas and Stanford. Stanford beat San Jose State, I think, by 14 or 15, and Texas beat them by like 30 something. So they beat Valparaiso, North Carolina A&T, and the very surprisingly bad Oregon Ducks. I mean, what is going on up there, dude?
Yeah, I mean, Dana Altman's had a pretty consistent program there for Oregon.
Very consistent.
Yeah, I haven't watched much Pac-12 hoops yet, so I couldn't tell you, but that's a shocker for sure.
I mean, BYU beat them by 30
earlier
this year. Yeah, I mean, they're getting crushed left and right. It's just very surprising to me. And they have good players coming in next year. They have Khalil Ware coming in, who's like arguably the number 1 center in the country. So, hopefully for their program, they don't lose all these recruits because of how bad they're playing this year. But so Stanford hasn't really beaten anybody good. Their most notable players is 5-star. He went to St. Mark's in Dallas, actually. Harrison Ingram. He's a 5-star small forward. He's their leading scorer. He's probably their best overall player. I think he'll probably be a one and done as well. I think he'll probably go to the NBA this year. But yeah, I mean, Stanford shouldn't be too tough of a game. Texas is a lot better than them. They have common opponents. The Texas has blasted every bad team they've played, and Stanford has not. So, I haven't watched a lot of Stanford this year. I've seen clips of them, so I don't know exactly what their play style is like. Like, I don't know if they play slow or fast pace, but just from looking at the stats, and from their games and stuff, I think Texas should probably roll in this one.
Well, at least it's a power 6 opponent, at least
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Opponent from the Pac-12, because it just has not been a great, I think we're going to see Chris Beard's schedule up moving forward after the season.
Well, it's bad for the team to not play good teams on, but they
right.
Like if they had been playing, like, I'm not even saying they need to play, Duke or like, Kentucky or whatever. They just need to play like more Stanfords, more Seton Halls, more teams that are fringe top 25. Schedule Michigan State. They used to play Michigan State all the time. They used to play North Carolina all the time in the preseason. Like when Shaka was there, I think they played North Carolina like every year for 7 years or something, and beat them like 6 out of those 7 times. But yeah, I mean, it's. I'm glad that they're playing. It's the Big 12 Pac-12 Challenge, or I forget what the exact name of it is, but it's that deal. The game's in Las Vegas, which is cool for the team. They get to go out to Sin City and hang out. It was fun to watch them. They were in New York City before the Seton Hall game, and they were just loving it. They're having a great time, and I just love the culture Chris Beard is building. Man, those guys really love each other. And one quick note, and then we can wrap up, but with Dylan Disu, he was in the post-game press conference the other night, and it was cool because I asked, what do you think, or like, how did the team rally around you sort of as you came back? And what Disu said is, everybody in this locker room wants what's best for everybody else in this locker room. They told me to just be myself out there. And it's like, that is the right attitude to have. Like, regardless of where this team goes this year, just building that foundation of player relationships, it's going to pay off eventually.
Yeah, well said.
All right, guys, thank you for watching this episode of Keep Austin Beard. I'm your host, Keenan Womack, with my co-host, my man, Ari Temkin. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Shoot Blake Skaggs an email so we can get started working on a deal for the sponsorship for the basketball content. And everybody have a good holiday, and we'll be back with you next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All righty, guys. Thank you so much.